The massive screen in Earth's Defense Command Center showed thousands of enemy ships spread across the star map. Their crystal hulls sparkled like stars themselves, making them look beautiful but deadly. Admiral Gray stood before this display, her hands clasped behind her back. She had been watching the enemy movements for hours, looking for any sign of weakness in their perfect formation. The Dominion fleet had pushed humanity back for months. Their ships were bigger, stronger, and more advanced than anything humans had built. But today, something caught her eye. It was so small that others might have missed it. A tiny gap in the enemy's supply line. "Show me the fuel carrier routes again," she ordered. The young officer at the computer quickly brought up the paths that the enemy's supply ships took through space. Admiral Gray leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Yes, there it was. The Dominion's mighty warships needed special fuel for their crystal technology, and all of it came through one narrow strip of space. "They think we're too weak to attack," she said quietly. "They've gotten careless." She turned to face the room full of officers. "Look at their supply ships. They're barely guarded. The Dominion thinks their main fleet is so scary that we won't dare go near their supply lines." Captain Reed, her second in command, stepped forward. "But Admiral, we don't have enough ships to attack their supply lines and defend our colonies at the same time." A small smile crossed Gray's face. "We don't need a fleet. We need one ship that can slip past their lines and hit their supplies. If we can cut off their fuel, those beautiful crystal ships of theirs will start to crack and die." The room went quiet. Everyone knew what she meant. A single ship would be on its own, deep in enemy space. It would be a suicide mission. But if it worked, it could change everything. Gray walked to another screen and pulled up the file of a ship, the HMS Thunder. Small, fast, and equipped with our newest stealth systems. And more importantly, its crew knows how to think differently. She looked at the gathered officers. The Dominion fights like machines. They follow the same patterns every time. But humans, we adapt. We surprise. And right now, they don't think we're capable of surprising them anymore. Warnings and doubts filled the room. "It's too risky," some said. "We can't spare even one ship," others argued. But Gray had seen too many human worlds fall to the Dominion. She had watched too many good soldiers die against their perfect formations and superior technology. "Send the orders to the Thunder," she commanded. "Tell them to prepare for a long-range mission." She turned back to the star map, her face lit by the glow of enemy ships. "The Dominion thinks they know everything about how humans fight. They expect us to be predictable, to fight fair, to meet them head-on like they want us to." She touched the screen, marking the supply route that the Thunder would target. "But they forgot something important about humans. When we're backed into a corner, we don't give up. We get creative. And sometimes, the biggest punch comes from the smallest fist." As the orders were sent out, Gray watched the endless stream of Dominion supply ships moving through space. Soon, those supply lines would become a hunting ground. Soon, the mighty Dominion would learn that they had made a terrible mistake in thinking they had humanity figured out. "One ship," she whispered to herself. "One ship to show them what humans can really do." The star map glowed in front of her, countless dots of light showing enemy vessels. But soon, one of those dots would start disappearing. And then another, and another. Until the Dominion learned that they should have been afraid of humans all along. The HMS Thunder floated silently in the darkness of space, its dark hull barely visible against the black backdrop. Captain Smith stood on the bridge, watching his crew prepare for what might be their final mission. 300 men and women, all volunteers, all knowing they might never see Earth again. The ship looked small compared to the massive crystal warships of the Dominion. But appearances could be deceiving. The Thunder's hull contained technology that no other human ship had. Pieces of salvaged crystal tech merged with human engineering in ways the Dominion would never expect. Where their ships were beautiful and bright, the Thunder was dark and quiet, designed to slip through space like a shadow. Engineering reports all systems ready, Captain. First Officer Walker said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. The stealth systems are operating at full capacity. She handed him a tablet showing the ship's status. Everything was green. Everything was ready. Smith nodded, his eyes moving across the bridge crew. Young faces mixed with old, all of them chosen for their ability to think differently, to adapt quickly. The Dominion's crews were trained to follow strict patterns and protocols. His crew was trained to break them. The Admiral's plan is simple, Smith said, addressing the bridge. We hit their supply lines. We make them nervous. We make them waste ships chasing shadows. He pulled up a map showing their planned route. But what makes this work is our new stealth system. Instead of bouncing detection waves away like normal stealth ships, we absorb them. To their sensors, we'll look like nothing more than a patch of empty space. The crew watched as he highlighted their first target, a fuel carrier moving through the outer edges of Dominion space. They expect us to fight like they do, with big ships and direct attacks. They don't expect a small ship that can strike and disappear. They don't expect humans to fight smart instead of fighting hard. A small light blinked on his console, the signal to begin. Smith took a deep breath, feeling the weight of command, the lives of his crew, the future of humanity all resting on what they would do next. Helm, take us in. Nice and slow. Engineering, begin power reduction. Let's disappear. The Thunder's engines hummed quietly as the ship moved forward, systems powering down one by one until only the essentials remained. On the main screen, they could see their first target, a massive Dominion fuel carrier, its crystal hull glowing with stored energy. 2 escort ships flew beside it, their sensors sweeping space in regular patterns. Look at them, Smith said softly. So confident, so sure that nothing can touch them. He watched as the escort ships continued their predictable patrol route. They'd forgotten something important about humans. We're descendants of hunters. We know how to stay downwind. We know how to wait for the right moment. The Thunder crept closer, its new stealth system drinking in the detection waves like a black hole swallows light. The escort ship's sensors passed over them once, twice, seeing nothing but empty space. The crew held their breath, watching, waiting. Do you know what the Dominion calls humans? Smith asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They call us primitives, backward, unworthy of the stars. A small smile crossed his face as they moved into striking position. It's time to show them just how wrong they are. The Thunder's weapons powered up silently, ready for their first strike. Soon, the Dominion would learn that they had made a terrible mistake. They had expected humans to be predictable, to follow the rules of space warfare as they defined them. Instead, they were about to face something they had never planned for. A hunter in the dark, patient, clever, and ready to strike. The Thunder's first shot split the darkness of space like lightning. The Dominion fuel carrier never saw it coming. The beam struck precisely where Captain Smith had planned, right at the junction between the carrier's crystal hull and its more conventional engine housing. The effect was immediate and devastating. Cracks spread across the carrier's crystal surface like spider webs on ice. The escort ships spun in confusion, their sensors still showing nothing but empty space where the Thunder floated. By the time they realized they were under attack, Smith had already ordered his second shot. Target their communication array, he ordered calmly. Don't let them call for help. The Thunder's weapons spoke again, and the carrier's communication spines shattered into glittering shards. The escort ships finally began to react, but they were moving in standard defense patterns, predictable, programmable, perfect for a crew that had studied them for months. The Thunder slipped between their return fire like water through stones. Every move the Dominion ships made, Smith's crew had seen in simulations. Every tactic they tried had been predicted and countered before the battle even began. Now they learn, Smith said, watching the escort ships waste energy trying to hit their invisible attacker. Now they learn that humans don't play by their rules. The carrier was leaking fuel now, its precious cargo spilling into space in streams of shimmering light. The escort ships moved to protect it, but they were protecting it from the wrong direction. The Thunder had already changed position, using the carrier's own bulk as cover from its defenders. "Engineering, status of our stealth system?" Smith asked, knowing they couldn't stay hidden forever. The energy cost of absorbing detection waves would eventually overwhelm their systems. "Holding at 80%, Captain," came the reply. "We can maintain stealth for another 10 minutes at current levels." That was all they needed. The Thunder struck again, this time targeting the carrier's engines directly. The explosion was beautiful in its silence, crystal shards catching starlight as they spun away into the void. The escort ships began firing randomly now, their perfect formations breaking down in the face of an enemy they couldn't see or predict. "Message to all hands," Smith announced, his voice carrying through the ship. "This is how we win. Not with bigger ships or stronger weapons, but with smarter tactics. Watch how they fall apart when their plans fail. Watch how they crumble when faced with something new." The Thunder fired one last time, disabling the first escort ship's main weapons. The second escort ship, faced with a choice between protecting its disabled companion and pursuing an invisible attacker, did exactly what their simulations predicted. It froze, caught between programming and protocol. "Helm, take us out," Smith ordered. "Nice and slow, just like we came in. Let them see nothing but stars where we used to be." The Thunder glided away from the battle scene, leaving behind 3 crippled Dominion ships and a message that would soon spread through their entire fleet. Humans were not the predictable, primitive enemies they had thought. In the ship's wake, emergency beacons lit up the space around the ruined carrier. More Dominion ships would come soon, but they would find nothing except broken crystal and wounded pride. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Thunder's crew was already planning their next attack, knowing that with each strike, the legend of the ghost ship would grow. The Dominion had built their entire military on the belief that their technology made them invincible, that their tactics were perfect, that their enemies would always fight in ways they could predict and counter. But they had never faced humans before. They had never faced an enemy that turned their own assumptions into weapons, that struck from shadows they didn't even know existed, that found ways to win even when victory seemed impossible. 2 weeks had passed since the first attack, and the Thunder's success had made the Dominion angry. Their crystal ships now moved in larger groups, escort vessels surrounding every fuel carrier like a swarm of shining hornets. But this was exactly what Admiral Gray had predicted. Every ship they pulled from their main fleet to guard supplies was one less ship threatening human worlds. The Thunder hid in the swirling storms of a gas giant, its hull creaking under the pressure. Inside, Captain Smith studied damage reports with a grim face. Their last raid had been too close. A lucky shot from a Dominion cruiser had grazed their port side, damaging the stealth system's absorbing panels. The crew worked on repairs, but they needed time they didn't have. 3 patrols have passed within sensor range in the last hour, Walker reported, her uniform stained with grease from helping with repairs. "They're searching in a grid pattern now. They're learning, Captain." Smith nodded slowly. The Dominion was adapting, just not in the way they expected. Instead of changing their tactics, they were simply using more ships, as if throwing enough crystal warships at the problem would solve it. Their pride wouldn't let them admit that a single human vessel had forced them to change their whole strategy. Through the bridge windows, they could see the gas giant's storms raging around them. Beautiful bands of red and orange swirled past, hiding them better than any stealth system could. But they couldn't stay forever. Their mission wasn't just to hide. It was to make the Dominion bleed. "Engineering reports the stealth system is at 60% capacity," Walker continued. "They say they can get it to 80%, but we'll need another 6 hours. She paused, then added, "We also lost 2 missile tubes in that last hit. If we go out there now, we'll be fighting at less than full strength." Smith stood and walked to the main viewport, watching another patrol of crystal ships pass far above them. The Dominion vessels glittered like jewels against the dark sky, their formation perfect as always. But now he could see something new in their movements, a hint of fear. They were flying closer together than before, weapons charged even when no threat was visible. "They're scared," he said softly. "Look at them. All that power, all that technology, and they're jumping at shadows." He turned to face his crew. "They built their ships to be beautiful. We built ours to survive. They fight for glory. We fight because we have to." A warning light flashed on the command console. Another patrol was approaching, this one flying lower, closer to the gas giant's atmosphere. They were expanding their search pattern. Soon, they would find the Thunder's hiding place. "We can't stay here," Smith decided. "If we wait until we're fully repaired, we'll lose our advantage. They're still learning, still adapting. We need to strike while they're scared, while they're still making mistakes." The crew looked at each other, then back to their captain. They knew what he was suggesting. Going into battle damaged, outgunned, with systems barely holding together. It was exactly the kind of crazy thing humans were known for. "Plot a course through the storm," Smith ordered. "We'll use the lightning bursts to mask our energy signature. Let them think we're just another disturbance in the clouds." His eyes hardened as he watched another crystal ship pass overhead. It's time to remind the Dominion why they should fear the dark spaces between their perfect formations. The Dominion command ship's crystal bridge sparkled with internal light as Fleet Commander Brightstone received another report of supply ships lost. His clear, crystalline fingers gripped the command rail tightly enough to crack it. In the month since the human ghost ship had appeared, they had lost 12 fuel carriers and 20 escort ships. But worse than the losses was the fear spreading through the fleet. Meanwhile, the Thunder drifted silent and dark, watching the enemy's communications light up the void between stars. Captain Smith and his crew had learned to read the pulses of crystal light the Dominion used to send messages. What they saw made them smile. The enemy was coming apart from within. "Another squadron breaking formation," Walker reported, watching the light signals flash between Dominion ships. "Their commander is refusing to split his forces to chase sensor ghosts." She paused, translating more of the light pulses. "They're fighting among themselves now. Some want to hunt us. Others want to stay close to the main fleet." Smith nodded, satisfaction clear on his tired face. This was what Admiral Gray had predicted. The Dominion's greatest strength, their unity and discipline, was becoming their greatest weakness. They couldn't handle an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, couldn't understand. Through the Thunder's viewers, they could see a Dominion battle group passing nearby. But unlike before, the crystal ships weren't flying in their usual perfect patterns. Some flew too close together, while others left dangerous gaps in their formation. Fear had infected their precision, turned their confidence into paranoia. "They're sending out another order from command," Walker said, her eyes fixed on the light pulses. "All ships are to maintain formation no matter what they detect." She looked up at Smith. "They're trying to force their captains to ignore us, to pretend we don't exist. And that's exactly why they'll lose," Smith replied softly. "They'd rather deny the threat than adapt to it. They'd rather pretend everything is fine than admit they might need to change." He watched as another group of crystal ships passed, their formation ragged and uncertain. "Humans survived on Earth because we adapted. When something tried to kill us, we didn't just get stronger, we got smarter." The Thunder's engines hummed quietly as they prepared for another attack. This time, they weren't targeting a fuel carrier. Their target was something far more valuable: the Dominion's pride. Their sensors had detected a high-ranking commander's ship, one of the ones still clinging to the old ways of fighting. "Send the message to Admiral Gray," Smith ordered. "Tell her Phase 1 is complete. The Dominion fleet is starting to crack." He smiled as he watched the enemy ships, their once beautiful formations now broken by fear and doubt. They thought their technology made them invincible. They thought their perfect tactics made them unbeatable. but they never understood what makes humans different. The Thunder's weapons powered up silently, ready to strike again. Soon, another piece of the Dominion's pride would shatter like their crystal ships, and the legend of the human ghost ship would grow stronger. In the darkness between stars, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to turn an enemy's strength against them, to find ways to win even when victory seemed impossible. Admiral Gray stood on her flagship's bridge as the Earth Defense Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. Before them, the Dominion's once mighty battle line had holes in it big enough to fly a planet through. Their crystal ships, still beautiful but no longer perfect, scrambled to close the gaps that weeks of fear and paranoia had created. The Thunder, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, watched as hundreds of human ships appeared where the Dominion's line was weakest. Captain Smith felt pride swell in his chest. Every gap in the enemy formation was there because of his crew's work. Every broken pattern in the Crystal Fleet's defenses had been carved by their actions. "Send the signal," Admiral Gray commanded, her voice carrying across the human fleet. "All ships, battle formations. Show them what a real fleet attack looks like." She smiled as her ships moved into position, not in rigid patterns like the Dominion used, but in fluid, adaptable formations that could change based on the enemy's response. The Dominion fleet commanders panicked. Their ships tried to reform their traditional battle lines, but they had spent too many weeks chasing shadows. Some ships rushed forward while others held back. Commands written in pulses of crystal light crossed back and forth, contradicting each other, adding to the chaos. "Now, Captain Smith," Gray's message reached the Thunder. "Show them what one ship can do when it strikes at the right moment." The Thunder's engines flared to life. They had studied the Dominion flagship for weeks, learned its weak points, understood its patterns. While the main fleet engaged the enemy head-on, the Thunder slipped through the chaos like a knife through water, heading straight for the heart of the Dominion command. "All power to weapons," Smith ordered. "They'd spent weeks looking for us. Let's give them exactly what they wanted." The Thunder's stealth systems powered down, and for the first time, the Dominion saw the ship that had haunted them. It was smaller than they expected, darker, nothing like their gleaming crystal vessels. But in that moment, seeing it appear from nowhere in the middle of their fleet, they finally understood why humans were so dangerous. The Thunder struck the Dominion flagship with everything it had. Not at its weapons or engines, but at the exact point where the living crystal met normal metal. The point that weeks of observation had shown was the weakest part of their mighty ships. The flagship's crystal hull cracked, the break spreading like lightning across its surface. Around them, the battle had become chaos. Human ships darted between the broken Dominion formations, striking where the enemy was weakest, adapting their tactics moment by moment. The rigid, perfect strategies of the Crystal Fleet fell apart in the face of human unpredictability. "Look at them run," Walker said, watching crystal ships break formation and retreat. "All their power, all their technology, and they never learned the most important lesson about warfare." Smith nodded, watching as the Dominion flagship's crystal hull continued to crack. "Never underestimate an enemy who has nothing left to lose," he said quietly, "and never expect them to fight the way you want them to fight." The space around the broken Dominion flagship filled with crystalline debris, each piece catching starlight like diamonds scattered across black velvet. The Thunder floated among these fragments, its dark hull scared but unbroken. Inside, Captain Smith watched as the last of the enemy fleet retreated, their perfect formations shattered not just by weapons, but by the realization that they weren't as invincible as they had believed. Admiral Gray's voice came through the command channel, reaching every human ship in the fleet. "The Dominion thought they could break humanity by showing us their power," she said. "Instead, we showed them something they had never seen before, a force that refused to fight by their rules, that turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses." The Thunder's crew gathered on the bridge, watching the battlefield through their viewports. Pieces of crystal ships drifted past like strange snow, glittering in the light of distant stars. They had started this mission thinking they were just one small ship against an empire. Now they knew better. They had been the spark that started a fire, the pebble that caused an avalanche. "Damage report," Smith called out, though he could feel his ship's wounds in the way she moved, in the creaks and groans of her hull. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, sealed and stable," Walker replied. "Stealth system at 30% capacity, weapons at 40%. But we're alive, Captain. We're all alive." Smith smiled, remembering how many times during their mission that had seemed impossible. The Thunder had taken hits that should have destroyed her, had pushed through situations that should have been certain death. Just like humanity itself, the ship had refused to break when bent. In the distance, they could see the human fleet regrouping, their formations fluid and adaptable, ready to change at a moment's notice. Unlike the rigid crystal ships of the Dominion, human vessels moved like schools of fish, each ship working with the others while ready to break away if needed. "The Dominion will be back," Admiral Gray's voice came through again. "But they'll come back different. They'll come back knowing that humanity isn't just another race to conquer. They'll come back remembering the ghost ship that haunted their fleet, the humans who turned their perfect tactics against them." The Thunder's engines hummed as they turned toward home, their mission finally complete. Behind them, repair ships were already moving in to salvage what they could from the battlefield. Human engineers would study the crystal technology, learn from it, adapt it. That's what humans did. They learned, they changed, they grew stronger. "Send a message to all hands," Smith ordered. "Tell them they did the impossible. Tell them they proved that it's not the size of the ship that matters, but the courage and creativity of its crew." He paused, looking at the tired but proud faces around him. "Tell them that today they showed the galaxy why humans should never be underestimated." As the Thunder moved away from the battlefield, other ships in the fleet sent messages of respect and thanks. The ghost ship that had terrorized the mighty Dominion was no longer a secret, but its legend would live on. In military academies across human space, they would teach about the small ship that changed the course of a war, not through superior firepower or technology, but through human ingenuity, adaptability, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat.